The massive alien ships appeared over Earth's major cities on a Tuesday morning in March 2157. They hung in the sky like silver clouds, casting long shadows over the streets below. People stopped their cars and pointed upward. Children pressed their faces against school windows. The news channels went crazy with breaking reports. Admiral Corvin stood on the command deck of his flagship, looking down at the blue planet through the viewing screen. His tall, gray-skinned form moved with practiced grace as he reviewed the reports flowing in from his scout teams. The humans were even more primitive than the initial scans had suggested. Their weapons were crude projectile systems and basic energy tools. Their ships could barely reach their own moon, let alone travel between stars. Most importantly, they seemed more interested in taking pictures of the alien vessels than preparing for war. Social media platforms buzzed with excitement rather than fear. Humans were posting selfies with the alien ships in the background. "Commander?" Lisa Park watched the alien ships from her office window at the Pentagon. Unlike most people, she felt a cold knot of worry in her stomach. 20 years of military service had taught her that visitors who arrived uninvited usually had their own agenda. She turned away from the window and began making quiet phone calls. 2 old contacts. The first official contact came 3 days later. A small shuttle descended to the United Nations building in New York. The being that emerged looked almost human, except for the pale blue skin and large black eyes. It spoke perfect English. Having learned the language from intercepted broadcasts, the alien introduced itself as Ambassador Thymus from the Galactic Federation. It explained that Earth had been discovered during a routine survey mission. The Federation was a peaceful alliance of 12 worlds, dedicated to bringing order and prosperity to less developed species. Thymus made the offer sound generous. Earth would become a protected world under Federation guidance. Humans would receive advanced technology, medical knowledge, and protection from hostile alien species. In return, they would share their planet's resources and accept Federation oversight of their governments. The world leaders gathered in emergency sessions. Some wanted to refuse, but the alien ships in orbit made negotiations seem like the safer choice. Dr. Marcus Webb, physicist at MIT, spent sleepless nights studying the few technical readings they could gather from the alien vessels. The technology gap was enormous. If these beings wanted to conquer Earth by force, they could do it in hours. President Maria Santos of the United States spoke for many world leaders when she addressed the United Nations General Assembly. "We have no choice but to accept their offer. These beings could destroy us if they wished. Perhaps cooperation will lead to a better future for our children." The Federation's assessment teams worked quickly. They cataloged human technology, social structures, and military capabilities. Captain Roy Anderson, commanding officer of Fort Bragg, noticed the alien observers taking detailed notes during routine training exercises. The visitors seemed particularly interested in how human soldiers followed orders and how quickly they could mobilize. Within weeks, the first Federation facilities appeared on Earth. Massive mining platforms descended on mountain ranges in Africa and South America. Agricultural supervisors arrived to optimize food production. Human workers were recruited for various projects, promises of good pay and valuable experience. Admiral Corvin reviewed the final assessment report with satisfaction. The humans had accepted their new status with minimal resistance. Their military forces were being integrated into Federation security protocols. Resource extraction was proceeding ahead of schedule. The report classified humans as Category 5, the lowest threat level in Federation records. They were described as a pleasure-seeking species that avoided conflict whenever possible. Their entertainment industry was vast. Their comfort technologies were surprisingly advanced, and they seemed to prefer negotiation over violence. Dr. Webb managed to examine some of the alien technology during the integration process. He worked late into the night in his laboratory, taking careful measurements and making detailed notes. The Federation devices were incredibly advanced, but they followed logical principles. More importantly, they seemed designed for beings who had never faced serious opposition. The alien ships had minimal armor plating. Their weapons were powerful, but required significant charging time between shots. Their communication systems used standard frequencies that could be intercepted with the right equipment. Webb began to wonder if the Federation had grown careless. After centuries of dealing with compliant species, Commander Park established contact with military officers around the world who shared her concerns. They communicated through old-fashioned methods, avoiding electronic systems that the aliens might monitor. Slowly, a network of suspicious humans began to form. The Federation administrators settled into their roles with growing confidence. They established processing centers in major cities where humans could apply for work permits and travel documents. The application process was designed to track the movement and activities of the entire population. Most humans adapted to the new reality. With surprising speed, the alien technology made many jobs easier. Medical treatments that had been impossible became routine. Transportation systems improved dramatically. Many people began to believe that Federation rule might actually benefit humanity, but there were subtle changes that worried observant individuals. Human governments found their authority gradually reduced. Important decisions required Federation approval. Military units were disbanded or reassigned under alien supervision. Earth's resources flowed steadily upward to the orbiting ship's captain. Anderson noticed that the most capable human military leaders were being transferred to remote assignments or early retirement. The aliens seemed to be systematically removing anyone who might pose a future threat. He began keeping detailed records of these personnel changes. The Federation's psychologists studied human behavior through intercepted communications and social media. They concluded that humans were fundamentally weak-willed. The species seemed to accept authority readily and showed little inclination toward organized resistance. Their historical conflicts appeared to be driven by resource scarcity rather than genuine warrior instincts. Admiral Corvin prepared his final report to the Federation Council. Earth's integration was proceeding perfectly. The human population was compliant and productive. Resource extraction targets were being exceeded. He recommended that the occupation force be reduced to a small administrative presence as the first year of Federation rule ended. Most humans had settled into their new lives. The aliens had brought peace, prosperity, and technological advancement. The old problems of war, disease, and poverty seemed to be fading into history. But in quiet corners of the world, a few humans continued to watch and plan. They studied the aliens' routines, mapped their facilities, and slowly gathered the tools they might need someday. Commander Park looked up at the alien ships each night and reminded herself that throughout history, conquerors had always made the same mistake. They assumed that compliance meant acceptance, and acceptance meant defeat. The Federation had no idea that they were dealing with a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. They saw only the peaceful surface of human civilization, never suspecting the depths of violence that humans were capable of when pushed too far. 2 years had passed since the Federation's arrival, and the comfortable lies were beginning to crack. What had started as a partnership was revealing itself as something much darker. The mining operations that had once seemed reasonable now tore through entire mountain ranges. Leaving behind poisoned earth and displaced communities, Commander Lisa Park stood in the ruins of what had been her childhood home in Colorado. The Federation's extractors had declared the area rich in rare minerals. The small town where she had learned to ride a bike and caught fireflies on summer evenings was now a crater filled with alien machinery. Relocated to processing centers with the promise of better housing that never came, the agricultural quotas had become impossible to meet. Federation supervisors demanded crops that Earth's soil couldn't produce in the quantities required. Is when farmers protested. They were replaced with alien-designed automated systems that stripped nutrients from the land at an alarming rate. Food shortages began appearing in regions that had been fertile for centuries. Dr. Marcus Webb worked in his makeshift laboratory, hidden in the basement of an abandoned warehouse. Over the past 2 years, he had managed to acquire several pieces of Federation technology through various channels. Some came from maintenance crews who were willing to look the other way for the right price. Others were salvaged from crashed drones or damaged equipment. His analysis confirmed what he had suspected from the beginning. The Federation's technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also predictable. Their devices followed, standardized, patterns that suggested a civilization that had grown comfortable with its dominance. More importantly, their equipment seemed designed for compliant populations, not active resistance. Captain Roy Anderson had been forced to retire from active duty, along with most of the experienced military leadership. The Federation claimed it was part of the integration process, but Anderson recognized it for what it was. They were systematically removing anyone who might organize effective opposition. He now ran a small farm in Montana, officially, unofficially. He maintained contact with former soldiers who had been scattered across the country. They communicated through old hunting radios and coded messages hidden in farming newsletters. Slowly, they were building a network of trained personnel who could act when the time came. The turning point began in the European processing centers. Humans who had been promised meaningful work found themselves performing repetitive tasks that machines could have done better. The real purpose became clear when Federation officials announced that the most productive workers would be selected for off-world assignments. The off-world assignments turned out to be labor camps on asteroid mining stations. Returned, when they returned at all, were changed. They spoke little about their experiences, but their hollow eyes and nervous habits told the story. The Federation was using human beings as disposable labor in environments, too. It's dangerous for their own people. Park's resistance network had grown carefully over 2 years. She had learned from history's successful underground movements. Cells of trusted individuals, minimal communication, and careful recruitment. They had been preparing for the day when the Federation's true nature would be impossible to ignore. That day came when the Federation announced the new Geneva relocation project. The city, built around the old CERN facility, was deemed too important for human habitation. The entire population would be moved to temporary housing while the area was converted into a major Federation research center. The temporary housing turned out to be massive camps surrounded by energy barriers. The residents were told it was for their own safety, but the barriers worked both ways. People could not leave without Federation permission, which was rarely granted. Families were separated. Children were enrolled in special education programs that seemed designed to make them forget their human heritage. Dr. Webb made a crucial discovery while analyzing Federation communication frequencies. Their security systems assumed that primitive species would remain primitive. The encryption was sophisticated, but it relied on mathematical principles that humans had mastered decades ago. With the right equipment, the resistance could intercept Federation communications. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young programmer named Tom Riley had been working on Federation computer systems as part of the integration program. He discovered that the aliens' databases contained detailed records of their operations across the galaxy. More importantly, he found evidence of what happened to species that had resisted Federation rule. The files made for horrifying reading. Entire planets had been sterilized when their populations proved uncooperative. Species that had shown military potential were systematically weakened through biological warfare. The Federation's mercy was reserved only for those who accepted permanent subjugation. Riley managed to copy the files before his access was revoked. The evidence spread through the resistance network like wildfire. The Federation wasn't just exploiting humanity. They were preparing to eliminate anyone who might someday pose a threat. Park called an emergency meeting of the regional cell leaders. They gathered in an abandoned mine shaft in West Virginia, 50 feet underground, where Federation sensors couldn't detect them. The faces around the table were grim as they reviewed Riley's intelligence. Anderson spoke first. "We always knew this day would come. The question is whether we're ready." Webb had been working on captured Federation weapons, trying to understand their principles. Their energy weapons are powerful, but they have weaknesses. The charging systems can be overloaded. The targeting computers assume predictable movement patterns. If we can force them into close combat, our conventional weapons might be effective. The final straw came on a gray October morning in New Geneva. The relocation was scheduled to begin at dawn, with Federation security forces moving systematically through the city. The plan was simple: round up the population, process them through identification stations, and transport them to the camps. But the people of New Geneva had been listening to underground broadcasts. They knew what the camps really were. When the Federation forces arrived, they found the city's residents waiting for them in the central square. 10,000 people, from elderly grandparents to young children. Standing together in silent protest, the Federation commander, a tall being with silver skin and no visible emotions, spoke through a translation device. "Will comply with relocation. Orders. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." An old woman stepped forward from the crowd. Her name was Helen Baker, and she had lived in New Geneva for 70 years. She spoke in a clear, steady voice that carried across the square. "This is our home. We will not leave." The Federation commander repeated the order. The crowd remained motionless. For a moment, it seemed like the confrontation might end peacefully. The Federation had always preferred compliance over violence, finding it more efficient than the commander made the decision that would change everything. He ordered his troops to use force to disperse the crowd. The energy weapons that had been designed to disable military targets were turned on unarmed civilians. The massacre lasted less than 5 minutes. When it was over, the central square of New Geneva was littered with bodies. The survivors were herded into transport vehicles with the efficiency of a slaughterhouse operation, but the Federation had made a critical error. They had failed too, jamming all communication systems during the operation. The images of the massacre were broadcast live across the world before they could be stopped. Humanity watched in horror as their peaceful neighbors were gunned down for the crime of wanting to stay in their homes. The broadcast spread through social media, underground networks, and old-fashioned word of mouth. Within hours, the footage had reached every corner of the globe. The Federation's mask of benevolence had been ripped away, revealing the true face of their rule. Park watched the footage from her command center, feeling a cold rage build in her chest. Around the world, her network received the same message: execute Operation Homecoming. The war begins now. Admiral Corvin's request for reinforcements had been approved with unprecedented speed. The Federation Council, shaken by reports of effective human resistance, authorized the deployment of the 4th Battle Fleet to Earth. Never before had such a massive force been needed to suppress a single planet. The fleet contained enough firepower to sterilize entire continents, but the Council wanted the humans taken alive if possible. Its dead species provided no labor, and the Federation's economy depended on a steady supply of compliant workers. The 4th Battle Fleet arrived in Earth's solar system like a plague of metal locusts. 300 ships of various sizes, carrying enough troops to occupy a dozen worlds. Admiral Corvin watched their approach from his flagship's command deck, feeling confident for the first time in weeks. Surely no primitive species could stand against such overwhelming force, but Commander Lisa Park had not been idle during the fleet's journey from Federation space. Her resistance network had grown beyond anything the aliens could have imagined, and what had started as a few military cells had evolved into a sophisticated intelligence organization with operatives in every major city on Earth. The resistance had learned to think like hunters rather than soldiers. They studied their prey with obsessive attention to detail, noting every routine, every weakness, every moment of vulnerability. The Federation troops followed predictable patterns based on military doctrine that had served them for centuries. That predictability would become their greatest weakness. Captain Roy Anderson crouched in the ruins of downtown Detroit, watching a Federation patrol move through the abandoned streets. The alien soldiers were using standard formation protocols, maintaining precise distances and communication intervals. Anderson could have predicted their route to the minute based on the manual he had studied in captured equipment. His team waited in positions that would have been impossible for unconventional military units to reach. They had spent days preparing. Spider holes in collapsed buildings, hidden tunnels connecting multiple structures, and escape routes through storm drains that the aliens had never bothered to map. When the patrol reached the kill zone, Anderson's people struck from 6 directions simultaneously. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. The Federation soldiers never had a chance to use their superior weapons effectively. They found themselves fighting at close range against enemies who seemed to appear from thin air. By the time reinforcements arrived, Anderson's team had vanished, leaving behind only empty ammunition casings and the aliens' confused reports. Dr. Marcus Webb had made his greatest breakthrough in an abandoned automotive factory outside Detroit. Working with salvaged Federation technology and human manufacturing equipment, he had successfully reverse-engineered the alien shield generators. But Webb had not simply copied their technology, he had improved it. Human engineering had always focused on making things work under adverse conditions. Federation technology was elegant and efficient, but it was designed for controlled environments. Webb's hybrid shields could operate in conditions that would overload the alien originals. More importantly, they could be manufactured using Earth's existing industrial infrastructure. The first squadron of shield-equipped human aircraft took to the skies over North America on a gray November morning. The planes were old fighters from military museums, upgraded with Webb's technology, and flown by pilots who had trained in secret for months. They looked primitive compared to Federation craft, but they carried something the aliens had never faced: pure human determination. The air battle over Chicago became legendary in the resistance networks. 12 human fighters engaged a full squadron of Federation interceptors in a running battle that lasted 2 hours. The alien pilots, trained in formation, combat, and energy weapon tactics, found themselves outmaneuvered by humans who flew like they were born in the cockpit. Lieutenant Susan Hayes, flying a modified F-16 that was older than she was, used tactics that no Federation pilot could have predicted. She flew through downtown skyscrapers at speeds that should have been impossible, using the buildings as cover while her makeshift shields absorbed energy weapon hits. When her ammunition ran out, she rammed her fighter into a Federation command ship, destroying both aircraft but saving dozens of human lives on the ground. The psychological impact of the air battle spread through both forces. Federation pilots, who had never lost a single engagement in decades of service, suddenly found themselves afraid to engage human aircraft. Meanwhile, resistance cells across the planet saw that their primitive technology could compete with alien superiority. Tom Riley, the programmer who had started the rebellion with his intelligence discovery, had evolved into something the Federation had never encountered: a human who understood their technology better than they did. Working from hidden servers and abandoned office buildings, he waged electronic warfare against the alien networks. Riley's greatest achievement was infiltrating the Federation's tactical communication system. The aliens assumed that no primitive species could break their encryption, so they had never changed their security protocols. Riley not only read their messages, but began feeding false information into their networks. Federation units received orders to redeploy to locations where resistance fighters were waiting in ambush. Supply convoys were redirected into kill zones. Medical evacuation requests were delayed until human forces could strike the vulnerable aircraft. The aliens' own communication system became a weapon turned against them. The resistance had learned to make the planet itself their ally. Federation forces, designed for combat in space or on sterile colony worlds, struggled with Earth's chaotic environment. Humans used weather patterns to mask their movements. They turned wild animals into early warning systems. They made every forest, every mountain, every urban maze into a fortress. Anderson's greatest victory came when he led the assault on the Federation's main supply depot in Colorado. The facility was built in an open valley, surrounded by energy barriers and defended by an entire battalion of alien troops. By conventional military standards, it was impregnable. But Anderson did not attack conventionally. His team spent 2 weeks digging a tunnel system that approached the depot from below, using mining equipment that the Federation had ignored as harmless. They emerged inside the facility's perimeter during a thunderstorm that masked their movement from orbital sensors. The battle for the supply depot lasted through the night. Federation reinforcements found themselves attacking their own facility. while human fighters used captured alien weapons against them. By dawn, Anderson's team had destroyed enough supplies to cripple Federation operations across the entire western United States. Admiral Corvon stood in his command center, staring at tactical displays that showed his forces being systematically defeated across the planet. The Fourth Battle Fleet, which should have ended the rebellion in days, was being ground down by an enemy that refused to fight. By any recognizable rules, the humans had learned to wage war as if it were a science experiment. They tested new tactics constantly, abandoning methods that failed and perfecting techniques that succeeded. Their rate of adaptation was faster than anything in Federation records. It was as if they were evolving in real dash time. Dr. Webb's team achieved their most ambitious goal when they successfully modified a captured Federation transport ship for human use. The vessel, originally designed to carry supplies between orbital stations, became the prototype for humanity's first space-capable warship. It was crude by alien standards, but it worked. The modified ship, christened Defiance by its human crew, launched from a hidden facility in the Australian outback. Its mission was to attack Federation supply lines in the asteroid belt. Far from Earth's surface, where the aliens expected to find human resistance, Commander Park watched the launch. From her underground command center, feeling a mixture of pride and terror, humanity was no longer trapped on their home planet. They were taking the war to their enemies in the depths of space itself. The Federation had awakened something in humanity that they could never have imagined. The alien officers who had classified humans as Category 5. Negligible threat were being proven wrong in the most spectacular way possible. The species that had seemed weak and pleasure-seeking was revealing itself to be one of the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever known. As winter settled over the war-torn Earth, both sides prepared for what everyone knew would be the final confrontation. Federation could not afford to lose to a primitive species. Humanity could not afford to lose at all. The hunt was entering its deadliest phase. The uprising began at exactly midnight, coordinated across 12 time zones. Commander Lisa Park had spent 2 years planning for this moment, and now her network activated like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. The Federation had expected scattered riots that could be easily crushed. Instead, they faced something they had never encountered in their long history of conquest, a species that became more dangerous when cornered. The first strike came at the orbital monitoring station above North America. Tom Riley, the young programmer, who had discovered the Federation's true intentions, led a team of technicians who had been secretly modified mining equipment for months. Their shuttle, disguised as a routine maintenance vessel, stalked with the station without raising alarms. The Federation crew never suspected that the humble maintenance workers carried improvised explosive devices built from their own power cells. The station's advanced shields were designed to stop military attacks from space, not sabotage from within. When the charges detonated, the monitoring hub that had watched over half the planet went dark in a brilliant flash. Admiral Corvin received the first reports in his command center aboard the flagship. The initial assessment was that human terrorists had somehow infiltrated the station. It seemed impossible that such a primitive species could have planned and executed such an operation. But the evidence was undeniable. Within hours, more reports flooded in. Federation facilities across Earth were under attack by groups that seemed to appear from nowhere. Mining platforms found their equipment sabotaged by workers who had seemed completely loyal. Agricultural centers discovered that their human supervisors had been secretly redirecting resources to resistant cells. Captain Roy Anderson led the assault on the Federation supply depot in Montana. His team of former soldiers moved through the facility like ghosts, using tactics that the alien defenders had never encountered. Instead of attacking the heavily fortified main entrance, they emerged from underground tunnels that had been dug over months of patient work. The Federation guards were trained to fight other military forces using predictable strategies. They were not prepared for humans who crawled through ventilation systems, cane merged from storm drains, and used their own supply containers as weapons. Anderson's team moved with deadly efficiency, striking critical systems and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Dr. Marcus Webb made his greatest contribution to the war effort from his hidden laboratory. He had spent 2 years studying Federation technology, learning its strengths and weaknesses. Now he put that knowledge to work, creating weapons that could punch through alien defenses. The breakthrough came when he realized that Federation energy shields operated on a specific frequency range. Human radio technology, primitive as it was, could generate interference patterns that disrupted those shields for brief moments. Webb's modified radio transmitters became the rebellion's most valuable weapon. Turning the aliens' advanced defenses into vulnerabilities, the Federation's response was swift and brutal. Admiral Corvin deployed the second battle group to Earth's surface, expecting to crush the rebellion with overwhelming firepower. The alien troops descended on major cities, their energy weapons ready to restore order through intimidation. But they found that the humans had learned to use their own environment against them. The narrow streets of old cities became death traps, where heavily armed alien soldiers could be attacked from above by humans with simple projectile weapons. The complex sewer systems that the Federation had ignored became highways for resistance fighters. In London, a team led by former Special Forces operator David Mills turned the underground tunnel system into a fortress. The Federation troops who pursued them found themselves fighting in cramped spaces where their energy weapons were nearly useless. Mills' people used everything from kitchen knives to modified tools, turning the aliens' technological advantage into a liability. The psychological impact of the resistance was even more devastating than the physical damage. For centuries, the Federation had dealt with species that either submitted immediately or were quickly crushed by superior firepower. They had never faced an enemy that adapted faster than their tactical computers could calculate. Park coordinated. The global resistance from a command center hidden beneath a shopping mall in Ohio? The irony was not lost on her. That humanity's greatest military operation was being run from underneath a place dedicated to peaceful commerce? She watched the tactical displays showing Federation forces being harassed across 6 continents. The aliens' advanced technology was failing them in ways they had never imagined. Their orbital surveillance systems were designed to track military movements, not guerrilla fighters who looked like ordinary civilians. Their combat computers could predict the behavior of trained armies, but not resistance cells that operated on improvised tactics and local knowledge. Webb made another crucial discovery while analyzing captured Federation equipment. The aliens' communication systems were incredibly sophisticated, but they were also completely centralized. Every message passed through command nodes that could be identified and targeted. If the resistance could disrupt enough nodes simultaneously, they could blind the entire Federation network. The operation began at dawn on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the New Geneva massacre. Resistance cells around the world attacked Federation communication hubs with synchronized precision. They used Webb's radio jammers to disrupt the defenses, followed by conventional explosives to destroy the physical infrastructure. The result was chaos in the Federation ranks. Units lost contact with their commanders. Supply convoys wandered off course. Medical evacuation requests went unanswered. For the first time in their history, Federation forces found themselves operating without the technological superiority they had always taken for granted. Anderson's team achieved the rebellion's greatest victory when they captured an intact Federation transport ship. The alien crew had been forced to land for emergency repairs, not knowing that human saboteurs had damaged their engines during a routine maintenance check. The transport contained enough advanced weapons and equipment to supply a dozen resistance cells. More importantly, the captured ship provided Webb with access to Federation navigation systems. He discovered that the aliens had detailed maps of their entire supply network, including the locations of every depot, factory, and staging area within 50 light-years of Earth. The Resistance now had targets throughout the local galaxy. The Federation Council received Admiral Corvin's emergency reports with growing alarm. The situation on Earth was deteriorating rapidly, and the Admiral was requesting massive reinforcements to restore order. But other member worlds were beginning to report their own problems as news of the human rebellion spread. Park stood in her command center, studying intelligence reports from around the world. The Resistance had grown from a few hundred dedicated individuals to a global movement involving millions of humans. Factory workers were sabotaging Federation equipment. Students were hacking alien computer systems. Even children were serving as couriers for resistance messages. The Federation had made their greatest mistake in assuming that humans would remain the weak, pleasure-seeking species they had first encountered. They had never imagined that the same creativity that produced entertainment and art could be turned to the business of war. Human ingenuity, unleashed by desperation, was proving more dangerous than all their advanced weapons. Dr. Webb completed his most ambitious project in the abandoned subway tunnels beneath Washington, D.C., using components salvaged from dozens of Federation devices. He had built a prototype shield generator based on alien technology, but powered by human engineering principles. The first test was successful, creating an energy barrier that could stop Federation weapons. The shield technology spread through the resistance network with remarkable speed. Within days, human fighters were carrying portable generators that could protect them from alien energy weapons for brief periods. The Federation's greatest advantage was being neutralized by their own captured technology. As the third week of the rebellion began, Admiral Corvin faced a situation that no Federation officer had encountered in over 1,000 years. His forces were being systematically defeated by a species that had seemed completely harmless just months earlier. The humans were not just fighting back, they were learning faster than his tactical computers could adapt. The rebellion had evolved from desperate resistance to sophisticated warfare in less than a month, and this was only the beginning. 6 months after the rebellion began, the war had transformed beyond recognition. What started as desperate resistance had evolved into something that terrified the Federation Council more than any military threat they had faced in their 1,000-year history. The humans were not just fighting. They were changing the fundamental nature of warfare itself. Admiral Corvin studied the latest intelligence reports in his private quarters aboard the flagship. The numbers were impossible to deny. Human forces now fielded a fleet of hybrid vessels that combined captured Federation technology with their own brutal innovations. Their tactics had evolved from simple ambushes to complex multi-theater campaigns that stretched Federation resources across dozens of star systems. The transformation had happened faster than anyone thought possible. Dr. Marcus Webb's engineering teams were producing new weapon designs every week, each one more deadly than the last. Human factories that had once made consumer goods were now turning out military equipment that rivaled Federation standards. Most disturbing of all, they were doing it with technology that should have taken decades to master. Commander Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the Resistance flagship Liberation, a modified Federation heavy cruiser that her people had captured during a daring raid on the enemy's primary fleet base. The ship had been gutted and rebuilt according to human specifications, turning it into something that was no longer recognizable as alien technology. The Liberation's crew was a mixture of former Abadari, military personnel, and civilians who had learned to fight during the war. They worked together with an efficiency that impressed even Park, who had spent 20 years in professional military service. These people had been farmers, teachers, and shop clerks just months ago. Now they operated one of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Captain Roy Anderson commanded the Resistance ground forces from a mobile headquarters that never stayed in one place for more than a few hours. His army had grown from a few hundred former soldiers to a disciplined force of over 50,000 fighters. They moved across the landscape like a force of nature, appearing wherever Federation defenses were weakest. The aliens had tried everything to stop Anderson's forces. They deployed their most advanced tracking systems, their deadliest weapons, their most experienced commanders. Nothing worked. The humans seemed to anticipate every move, counter every strategy, and adapt to every new threat faster than the Federation could develop responses. Tom Riley had become something that did not exist in Federation military doctrine, a human who waged war through information itself. His network of electronic warfare specialists had infiltrated every major alien computer system. They read Federation messages before the intended recipients, redirected supply shipments to Resistance bases, and fed false intelligence that sent entire fleets chasing phantom targets. Riley's greatest achievement, It's the virus he had planted in the Federation's central tactical database. The program was designed to learn from alien military doctrine and slowly corrupt it with subtle errors. Federation commanders were making decisions based on faulty information without realizing that their most trusted systems had been compromised. The final confrontation began when Admiral Corvin received orders from the Federation Council that left no room for interpretation. Earth was to be pacified immediately, using whatever force was necessary. If the human population could not be controlled, it was to be eliminated entirely. The Council could not allow news of an effective resistance to spread to other subjugated species. Corvin assembled the largest military force in Federation history. Nearly 1,000 ships, carrying enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The fleet moved toward Earth in perfect formation, their energy weapons charged and ready. This time, there would be no mistakes, no underestimation of human capabilities. The species that had caused so much trouble would be eliminated once and for all. But humanity had not been waiting passively for the final assault. Park's intelligence network had been tracking the Federation fleet since it left their home systems. Every ship had been identified, every weapon cataloged, every weakness analyzed. The humans knew exactly what was coming, and they were ready. Battle began in the asteroid belt, where the human ship Defiance and her sister vessels had been waiting in ambush. The Federation fleet expected to face primitive spacecraft with jury-rigged weapons. Instead, they encountered vessels that fought with a coordination and ferocity that their tactical computers could not process. The human ships used the asteroids as cover, appearing from behind rocky shields to fire devastating salvos before vanishing again. They moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually based on mathematical principles that the Federation had never encountered. Each attack was perfectly timed, each retreat calculated to draw the enemy into an even more dangerous position. Dr. Webb's greatest innovation revealed itself during the space battle. The human ships were equipped with what he called adaptive shields that could change their frequency patterns in real time. Federation weapons that should have destroyed human vessels found their energy being absorbed and redirected back at their own ships. The asteroid battle lasted 18 hours and ended with the Federation fleet in full retreat. They had lost over 200 ships to an enemy force that they outnumbered 10-1. The survivors fled toward Earth, their confidence shattered by an encounter with warfare beyond their comprehension. Admiral Corvin made his final stand in Earth's orbit. Deploying his remaining forces in a defensive formation around the planet, he would complete his mission or die in the attempt. The reputation of the Federation depended on crushing these rebellious humans before their example inspired other species to revolt. But Commander Park had learned to think 3 steps ahead of alien tactical computers. While Corvin prepared his orbital bombardment, human forces were implementing a strategy that no Federation commander could have anticipated. They were not just defending their planet. They were turning the entire solar system into a weapon. The human fleet emerged from behind Earth's moon in perfect formation, but something was wrong with their approach. Instead of engaging the Federation forces directly, they began broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple but devastating. Live footage of Federation atrocities from across the galaxy, transmitted to every inhabited world within 50 light-years. Riley's electronic warfare teams had spent months preparing for this moment, out in infiltrated communication networks throughout Federation space, creating a broadcast system that could not be stopped or filtered. The images of destroyed worlds, enslaved populations, and systematic genocide spread across the galaxy faster than any military force could contain them. The psychological impact was immediate. Federation crews who had believed they were serving a peaceful alliance suddenly saw evidence of their government's true nature. Some ships began powering down their weapons. Others broke formation entirely, their crews refusing to participate in what they now recognized as a war of extermination. Admiral L. Corvin watched his fleet disintegrate around him as the truth spread through his forces like a virus. The Federation's greatest strength had always been the loyalty of its member species. Based on the belief that they were part of a benevolent civilization, that belief was crumbling in real time as the evidence of their crimes became undeniable. The final battle was unlike anything in military history. Human ships fought alongside Federation vessels whose crews had mutinied against their own commanders. The space around Earth became a chaotic battlefield where the lines between friend and enemy shifted constantly. Some alien crews fought to the death for their government. Others turned their weapons on their former allies. Park commanded the Battle from the Liberation's Bridge, coordinating attacks while simultaneously managing a diplomatic revolution. Representatives from a dozen Federation worlds were requesting immediate communication with the human resistance. They wanted to know how humanity had achieved what no species had accomplished in 1,000 years: effective rebellion against Federation rule. The end came when Admiral Corvin's flagship found itself surrounded by human vessels and Federation ships whose crews had joined the rebellion. The Admiral could have fought to the death, but he was a practical military officer who recognized defeat when he saw it. He ordered his remaining loyal ships to surrender. The aftermath of the battle transformed the galaxy forever. News of the Federation's defeat at Earth spread faster than their fleets could travel. Within weeks, rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds. Species that had submitted to Federation rule for centuries suddenly remembered what freedom meant. Dr. Webb found himself in the unexpected position of teaching alien engineers how to adapt Federation technology for their own use. The techniques he had developed to reverse engineer alien equipment became the foundation for a new kind of technological exchange based on cooperation rather than domination. Captain Anderson was appointed to lead a joint human-alien military force tasked with liberating the remaining Federation territories. His unconventional tactics, combined with alien knowledge of Federation weaknesses, proved devastatingly effective. World after world threw off their chains as the liberation forces advanced. The Federation Council, faced with the collapse of their empire, sued for peace. The negotiations took place on Earth, with Commander Park representing humanity and alien delegates speaking for their newly freed worlds. The treaty that emerged established the Galactic Liberation Alliance, dedicated to preventing any single species from dominating others. Tom Riley's virus had done more than corrupt Federation databases. It had preserved detailed records of every atrocity committed during their rule. The evidence was used to establish war crimes tribunals that ensured justice for countless victims across the galaxy. The Federation's leaders faced judgment for crimes that spanned centuries. 1 year after the rebellion began, Park stood in the same Pentagon office where she had first watched alien ships appear over Earth. The view outside her window had changed dramatically. Human and alien vessels worked together in Earth's orbit, building the headquarters for the new alliance. The species that had seemed so threatening were now partners in a shared vision of galactic freedom. Dr. Webb addressed the first Alliance Science Council from his laboratory, which had expanded from a hidden basement to a massive research complex. The Federation made a fundamental error, he explained to the assembled alien scientists. They assumed that advanced technology required advanced civilization. They forgot that the most dangerous innovations come from necessity, not comfort. The final ceremony took place in the ruins of New Geneva, where the massacre had sparked the global uprising. A memorial was built on the site where Helen Baker had made her stand against tyranny. Representatives from 47 worlds attended the dedication, honoring the humans who had died to light the spark of rebellion. Admiral Corvin, under house arrest pending his war crimes trial, was interviewed by Alliance historians seeking to understand the Federation's perspective. His final statement became legendary. "We thought we were dealing with a primitive species that preferred peace to war. We're half right. They did prefer peace. But when forced to choose war, they became something we had never imagined, a species that could evolve faster than we could adapt." The galaxy had learned a truth that would echo through history. The most dangerous enemy was not the one who looked threatening from the beginning. It was the one who appeared harmless until pushed too far, then revealed capabilities that no one had suspected. Humanity had seemed weak because they chose to be peaceful. That choice, and their ability to abandon it when necessary, made them the most formidable force the galaxy had ever known. The war was over, but its lessons would shape the future of countless worlds. Never again would any species make the mistake of confusing preference for incapability. or assumed that those who chose peace were incapable of waging war. The humans had taught the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous predator was the one that didn't look like a threat until it was far too late.